welcome to another episode of Dafuq. Did I just watch? For this week's episode, be sure to buckle those seatbelts tightly and double check that you've got a full tank of NOS as we recap and review Fast X. And before we get too far along in the review, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, as it's much appreciated and it helps keep the show alive. And if you haven't seen Fast X and would still like to, make sure you pause now and return later, as there may be several spoilers up ahead. That's right, this is your official spoiler alert. Fast X was originally slated to be directed by Justin Lin, who is no stranger to the franchise and who is also responsible for the rebirth of the franchise, having directed Fast and Furious 4, 5, and 6, which can be arguably called some of the best of the franchise. Now, evidently, there was a bit of drama behind the scenes between director Justin Lin and Vin Diesel, and so Justin Lin is replaced by director Leterrier, who is no stranger to the action genre, with plenty of movies like Transporter 1 and 2, Clash of the Titans, and even The Incredible Hulk, the Edward Norton version. Fast X introduces a brand new villain in a very familiar Fast and Furious way. This isn't the first time that the Fast and Furious franchise retcons its way back into the past to reveal that there was a villain there in the past the whole time who's just now catching up to us in the present. The first 10 or 15 minutes of the film are kind of like a flashback or a recap all the way back to Fast 5 to give us a little refresher on what was going on in that movie, and also to reveal that Jason Momoa was there in the background like, hey, the whole time. Fast X sees the return of nearly every character you can imagine from the Fast and Furious franchise, but the story gets really interesting when it splits our cast up into basically three different groups. One being the Vin Diesel group, which is the majority of our familiar faces. It's Ludacris, it's Tyrese, it's Jason Statham. They're all kind of hanging out with Vin Diesel and having the most action probably, but personally, the more intriguing, the more interesting stories are the ones that are the more contrasting dynamics. Like you have Michelle Rodriguez and Charlize Theron, who pair up and have a very interesting dynamic, as well as John Cena teaming up with the kid in the movie, Vin Diesel's son, and having a fantastic uncle-son, uncle-nephew relationship. And it was so great to see him getting fleshed out and getting to do so much more in this movie. Fast X, John Cena shines in this movie. It is so amazing to see him go from just being grumpy, just, doing an impersonation of Vin Diesel, to he's being goofy, he's being silly, he's being cool, he's being the coolest, most awesome uncle that you could ever possibly want in your life. Brie Larson also jumping into the Fast and Furious franchise. That's right, it's Captain Marvel crossing over. I don't know, she plays Kurt Russell's daughter. She's Mrs. Nobody, or the daughter of nobody, or whatever you want to call her. Tess, I believe was her name in the film. She was okay. She was fine. I don't know. She didn't do a lot. She's not bringing a bunch to the table. If you delete all of her scenes, I think it's more or less the same movie. She doesn't do much. And that brings us to the main part, right? That brings us to what we all want to talk about already, right? That brings us to the shining star of Fast X, and that is Jason Momoa. Because he is perfection. He is everything. He is the best villain I have seen on screen in years. He is basically the Fast and Furious version of the Joker, where he's so funny, so fun, so evil at the same time. He is a literal lightning bolt of energy that anytime his face pops on the screen, it is electric. The pacing and energy in this film is next level, and it's all because of Momoa, dude. It's all because of Aquaman. This movie flows like water because of Aquaman. And he's like the best kind of villain too, because he doesn't even want to kill Vin Diesel. Well, I mean, like, not initially, but he like just, all he wants to do is just make him suffer, dude. That's like his whole thing is like, I don't want to, it's almost an exact like copy of that line from The Dark Knight, dude, where he's like, I don't want to kill you, you complete me. Like, we're yin and yang, dude. Like, I'm having the time of my life trying to kill you and destroy you. Why would I want to like end that, dude? This is the greatest. And he has such amazing timing. He has such, why is Jason Momoa not in more comedies, dude? Because his comedic timing is so next level. Or just the way that he's like, anytime, like, even when the Fast and Furious gang is doing like cool stuff to like foil his plan, he's not even pissed. He's just like, oh, que bueno, like, beautiful. Jason Momoa is having such an amazingly fun time, like, acting in this movie, that it makes it like 10 times more fun for the audience to watch somebody who's having like an amazing time. As with any other Fast and Furious movie, this thing is jam-packed with action, and everything looks relatively good. Everything looks like all the action sequences are done in a way where it's not confusing or like muddling. If I do have one thing that kind of bugged me a little bit, it's that they have that weird CGI car thing going on. Like, there's a couple scenes where he's like driving up and down some stairs, and it just looks weirdly CGI, if that made sense. One of my biggest concerns with Fast Earth is that you would feel the runtime, that you would feel the 2 hours and 20 minutes. That was my main call out from F9, is that you really felt the runtime of that film. That film feels really long. There's a lot of lulls, there's a lot of slowdown in F9 that just dragged it out and made it feel twice as long as it probably should. F-Earths solves that problem because it has an amazing flow throughout the entire film. You do not feel the time hardly at all. It breezes by very smoothly, and I want to contribute most of that to Jason Momoa. It's also interesting too with the way that the film ends, because if you consider it being like a part 1, 2, 3, if you put it along the lines of, like, for example, Star Wars, like New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and then Return of the Jedi, the way that this film ends, it ends like not just on a cliffhanger, it ends like on a downer. It has like an Empire Strikes Back kind of ending, like that, kind of like an ending where it's like, oh man, we just lost, which is interesting because you'd think that you would save it for the part 2, but they're coming out with part 1 like on a real somber ending. So let's hit Fast Earths with our overall rating. Overall, Fast Earths is successful because it brings back all these like familiar things that we love about Fast and Furious movies, like, you know, racing and cars and NOS and insane over-the-top action. But then it also keeps it fresh by introducing these new amazing characters that are extremely entertaining. And it also takes our older characters who were kind of lesser developed and really expands on them and fleshes them out and really gives you an appreciation for how incredible these characters really can be. Overall, there really isn't a ton of things negatively to be said about Fast Earths. I mean, with a runtime of 2.5 hours, yeah, there are maybe a moment or two where it slows down a tad. There's a moment where he goes and visits like the sister of his ex, slows it down maybe a tiny bit, but as a whole, it's very streamlined. As a whole, it flows incredibly. And like I said, Jason Momoa steals basically the entire movie. It's Jason Momoa's Fast and Furious now. And so overall, there isn't a ton of negative things to say about this film. If this is our grand finale, if this is part 1 of our trilogy finale, they really came out of the gate swinging on this one. They really set the bar high on part 1. So overall, we're going to hit Fast Earths with a B+. That's right, coming in well above average. This movie is over the top entertaining. It is extremely fun. Jason Momoa is a shining star in this film, and it is not to be missed. It is worth it entirely for just Jason Momoa's performance, and I look forward to the next 2 parts of the franchise. If you felt differently about Fast Earths, then feel free to comment down below, and if you haven't already, Hit that like and subscribe because it's much appreciated. I am your host as always, Kyle McLemore. We'll see you next time at the movies.